Hello, my beautiful friends. What an amazing day it is, and welcome back. I hope your weekend was just outstanding and you're roaring and ready to go. We got a great stream planned. We're diving into a Supreme Court victory. Quick preview, and then we'll zoom in and hit the highlights. What we can see is acting U.S. Attorney Bill Esseley is out, and he's celebrating this one. Pam Bondi is also celebrating this one. It's a 6-3-er. It is a very short majority opinion. You see it right there. It's just kind of that one paragraph. Kavanaugh is going to come out, give us a concurrence, and then we're going to see a dissent here from a very whiny Sotomayor. And so we'll go through this. We'll see what it's all about. But of course, this is about the ICE arrests. And the issue on this one was whether or not the law enforcement or federal agents can use certain indicia. Can you look at the fact that somebody's, outside a Home Depot speaking Spanish, has a, positive ID, has some other characteristics that are showing you that person is who they think they are? Is that enough for reasonable suspicion? A very low standard. Remember, you can target everybody outside of bars. You can, target high traffic drug activity zones and all sorts of things. But if you target illegal immigration, then they freaked out. The left was very upset about this, saying, don't be such a bigot. And the Supreme Court just came back down and reversed, because now we see the decision is 6-3 in favor of the executive branch. Now, we've also got something interesting, a little bit of a treat here, because Amy Coney Barrett very rarely speaks. Most Supreme Court justices rarely speak. And she went out and was on with Barry Weiss over at the Free Press. Apparently, this is what $200 million is worth. So you can see she got Amy Coney Barrett on and then asked her kind of a weird question about, like, do you regret your decision or something? And she's like, no. Anyways, we'll go through it. And Amy Coney Barrett is also confirming for us there is no constitutional crisis. Okay, you maniacs, just chill out. America's had much worse crises than Trump arresting illegal aliens. All right, so we'll go through that. See what she had to say. Bunch of reaction from the administration, and they are unloading. So Chicago's next, and now they've got the Supreme Court at their back, explaining that Operation Midway Blitz is happening in Chicago, and so they're unloading over there. Fox News has the report, and so we'll come back to all of that. Then we'll turn our attention to E. Jean Carroll. You remember this crazy woman? Well, she was on this interview with this fella, and they were talking about the trial, and we've called it a scam from the very beginning because they passed a new law to enable her to file her claim against Trump. Her lawyer admitted that on an interview, Roberta Kaplan. And then it was funded by Reid Hoffman, George Conway, Molly Jong-Fast. They all came together to form like the Democrat Avengers. It was terrible, terrible film. And tried to support this woman because they was part of the lawfare attack against President Trump. Well, unfortunately, we got a ruling saying that the verdict is valid. This is coming out of the Second Circuit Court of Appeals. Obviously, Trump is going to appeal this to the Supreme Court. He's already intimated as such. And so we'll see what they had to say about it. We'll hit the highlights, but it was just before 3 judges on the panel. So it might go up to the full en banc, full panel. And the appeal is working its way through. And so we'll come back and see what's going on. And then we have this little trip down memory lane of the vagina cat lady, because this is the person who they exploited to go after Trump. Then we'll turn our attention to this new story over from Axios. Rarely do you get anything that's anti-Democrat or anti-Biden from Axios, but Alex Thompson published this one, and he said, we got a scoop here. Biden admin officials who are high-ranking repeatedly questioned and criticized how he was going to do his pardons, and it sounds like Joe Biden was delegating a lot of this stuff out, even for his family members. All right, so we'll go through this report. New reporting here from Alex Thompson, and the memos just keep coming out. We've got more from James Comer. He's speaking about this, and more evidence is just piling up. Biden's brother, James, also hired an ex-Secret Service agent to help Chinese businesses. And you go, what? Oh, that's why they got pardoned. Oh, now we know. So we'll go through it. We'll hit the highlights on it, and we'll hear from James Comer himself and explain exactly what's going on, and get into it on the day. So it's going to be a great stream, my friends. Thank you for being here, and I hope your week is off to just an incredible start. We are excited to have you here. We had a members-only stream this morning. Oh, and a little housekeeping note. So my brother Joey is here, and he's here for about, I think, 12 days, something like that, about a week and a half. And he requires a constant supply of hash browns and sausages. And so we might have some early shows so we can dedicate a couple afternoons to that process. And we're going to have a great time. So you might see updates. You might see a little earlier show. Thanks for hitting the notification button so that you don't miss those in case we need to do that. But we're going to get into it. We've got the Supreme Court now who is issuing a ruling, and it is worth getting into. So let's do it, shall we? Victory out of the Supreme Court, 6-3 decision coming down. And acting U.S. Attorney Bill Esseley, he's over in L.A., is celebrating this. He said, you know, the Supreme Court just stayed the district court's order. Okay, so the high court staying the lower court order that restricted immigration enforcement in California. So if you recall, Trump deployed the ICE individuals and agents to go and make the arrests. And they said, you can't profile, essentially, these illegal aliens. They said only basically white males who are Mormon, who are on bikes in white shirts, or who are working on the 7th floor of businesses in downtown can actually be questioned. Otherwise, if you question anyone else, you're a racist. You can't ask a Mexican person about being an illegal alien. That's a bigoted thing to do, is what their argument was. And you thought that's pretty interesting because the police can target high-profile crime areas all over the place. They can target high-traffic drug zones. They can target repeat offenders. They set up task forces like East Valley Task Force in Arizona every July 4th. And all the cops go out and they just hang out outside the bars and the weed shops and they just arrest people. And so this is criminal law that we're talking about. And it's already been well established. We've got this concept called reasonable suspicion. Cops can use indicia to develop reasonable suspicion and then make the arrest as necessary. And so here he says, we argued that the order that said you couldn't use any of those indicia, like you can't say, oh, they speak Spanish. Oh, they're at Home Depot. Oh, you know, they look like this, or they're wearing that, or they're transacting with this group of people. Can't do any of it. They said, we argued that this was overly broad, aiming to hinder our ability to apprehend and remove illegal aliens in Los Angeles. Now, he says, we are a nation of laws. Federal law enforcement is non-negotiable and cannot be curtailed by any court. If plaintiffs disagree with immigration laws, they should address Congress, not a single judge. And that's exactly right. Okay. And Congress is not a neutered body. I was going to say emasculated, but it's true. It definitely is emasculated. And they just sit around and don't do much of anything, but they could do a bunch of stuff. And if they were so upset about what Trump was doing, they could pass some legislation or do something about it. They could impeach him if they wanted to, but they're not. And of course, they're not making their arguments to Congress. They're just going to judges like Breyer and just asking him to invalidate the entire Trump enforcement effort. And so the Supreme Court came down today. And so a little bit of procedural orientation. This is a stay. So Trump got stopped from enforcing the law by an injunction from the lower level court. They're saying, can you please stop that lower level injunction so we can actually do our jobs? We haven't litigated this up to the merits yet. I haven't had oral arguments or full briefings on this out of the Supreme Court, but it's just, you know, kind of an early positioning. Can the stay be in effect so that he can enforce the law? That's where we're at. Now, it's a very short majority opinion, as you'll see. And we're going to have a much bigger opinion from Judge Kavanaugh in a concurrence. And then we'll hear from the dissent, the whiners. So the application for the stay was presented over to Justice Kagan. And the one that's referred to the court is hereby granted. The July 11th order that was entered by the lower level judge is stayed. Sorry, Judge. Pending the disposition of the appeal in the United States Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit and disposition of the petition for a writ of cert to the Supreme Court. So in other words, the lower level order doesn't have any effect right now. It's working its way through the appeals. The order was in effect while it was working its way through the appeals, but now it's not. So Trump can do so it's a reversal of power. So now this is going up. They say if we don't accept the case, then the stay shall terminate in the event cert is granted. Once we send down judgment, the stay shall terminate then. Okay, so it's not permanent. It's when there's another resolution, Ninth Circuit decides, our stay will be lifted. If the Supreme Court decides, then our stay will be lifted, right? So we're going to allow it to process, but the judge was wrong. The judge does not have the right to stop Trump from enforcing the law. And what's so interesting about this is, now, I'm sure there's probably going to be like 12 or 13 partisan hack Democrat cowardly judges. Maybe they'll go talk to the media again about this and cry like little babies about how hard it is to understand the law. What does this mean? We don't know. We're just federal judges. It's pathetic. And this, anybody who went to law school, other than these judges apparently, understands this is how the Supreme Court works. You make all your arguments. They just say, no, those arguments are wrong, obviously. So now you go back and follow the law as written. We don't need to give you a bunch of additional details because the law is the law. There's already case law. There's already precedent. So people coming out and like Sotomayor screaming about this, well, this is, we're not giving it the full weight and reaching the merits on it. Well, we'll come back to that because, of course, they always make that argument when they're not in charge. And if they are in charge, then they're perfectly fine racing through the shadow docket, as they say. So that's all we got, right? So big victory for Trump, 6-3. You can see there were 6 people up in here, and we don't get much from John Roberts or Amy Coney Barrett, but they're in that majority. They're in that majority. And so Justice Kavanaugh is now concurring. So he's going to explain and flesh this out a little bit more for us for the thick-headed judges who speak to the media. Says, I vote to grant the government's application for a stay, explaining the Immigration and Nationality Act authorizes immigration officers, the law says this, to interrogate any alien or person believed to be an alien as to his right to be or to remain in the United States. Wow, it's pretty obvious. I wonder if the judge just missed that statute. Says here, immigration officers, according to the law, may also briefly detain an individual for questioning if they have a reasonable suspicion based upon specific articulable facts that the person being questioned is an alien illegally in the United States. Trump has the full power to do it. It's in the law. And this is the Code of Federal Regulations, which is interpreting the U.S. Code, explaining here, and the case law backs it up too. We had a 2025 case. We had a 1975 case. We had a 2002 case. And reasonable suspicion is, one of the most litigated concepts in the law. I mean, it's like the beginning of every criminal case. Like, oh, why'd you get stopped? Reasonable suspicion. Oh, and then you develop probable cause and you conduct the arrest. Okay, we got it. So it's like, it all starts with this. So it's fleshed out. This is not like new. This is not dictator Trump coming down here and taking over America. The reasonable suspicion inquiry turns on the totality of the particular circumstances. And you hear cops say that all the time. It's like when you don't know what else to say. Well, why'd you do that, officer? Well, the totality of the circumstances. And judges are like, oh, that's really smart. The government estimates that at least 15 million people are in the United States illegally. At least. Many millions illegally entered or illegally overstayed just in the last few years. Illegal immigration, writes Kavanaugh, is especially pronounced in LA, sanctuary city, among other locales in the United States. And about 10% of the people in the LA region are illegally in the United States. 10%! It's crazy. Meaning about 2 million illegal immigrants out of 20 million. Okay, that's like 4 Wyomings. I'm pretty sure if you do the math on that. 4 Wyomings worth of illegal aliens in California. So it's like no wonder they have to support them because they're a very vocal, very numerous group. Not surprisingly, given these extraordinary numbers, U.S. immigration officers have prioritized immigration enforcement in LA. Obviously, there's 2 million people there. It's going to take a lot. The government sometimes makes brief investigative stops to check the immigration status of those who gather in locations where people are hired for day jobs, which is just openly illegal, right? Saying who work and appear to work in jobs as construction, landscaping, agriculture, or car washes, and they don't require paperwork, and therefore attractive to illegal immigrants, they call them. And so who do not speak much, if any, English. Now, if the officers learn that the individual they stopped is a U.S. citizen or otherwise lawfully in the United States, they promptly let the individual go. If the individual is illegally in the United States, well, that's illegal. So they arrest the individual and they initiate removal proceedings. So they just go where the illegals are and they say, well, are you illegal? And they say, yes, I am. Say, oh, great, you're gone. Now, immigration stops based on reasonable suspicion have been an important component of immigration enforcement. Okay, so even outside the context of criminal law for decades, across several presidential administrations as well. In fact, in this case, however, the district court in California, these maniac judges It's been the same forever, except now, where the U.S. district judge in California stopped ICE officers from making investigative stops when they identify these factors, these indicia, these check boxes. You say, oh, check. Okay, that's reasonable suspicion. I've articulated some facts, and I can explain how that leads to what I think might be a problem, and you investigate it. Saying here, but if you're an ICE agent in California up until today, you couldn't ask about presence at particular locations like bus stops, car washes, day laborer pickup sites, agriculture sites, and the like. The type of work one does, can't ask about it at all, can't target construction workers, can only target the white Mormons who are preaching, riding around the countryside. Speaking Spanish, nope, got to go talk to the English speakers who are running Fortune 500 companies on the 7th floor. Or speaking English with an accent. Apparent race or ethnicity. Again, so it's like if you look at a Mexican guy and you say, oh, you might be illegal because you're here at a day laborer center and you don't speak a lick of English and we can see what's happening here. That you can't do it. Sorry. It's like 3 strikes, you're out. That's like, those are indicia. Applies to every other person in America. If you are selling drugs and transacting drugs, maybe you're just selling oregano or something. Oh, I just grew this in my garden. But cops come up, they investigate it. Oh, it's just oregano. And they let you go. So the government contends that the injunction will substantially hamper its efforts to enforce immigration in LA. The government has therefore asked the court to stay the court's injunction, and they've granted that. Now, Kavanaugh explains, to obtain a stay from this court, the moving party must demonstrate, so Trump must show, that there is a fair prospect that if the district court decision were affirmed on appeal, that this court would grant cert and reverse it, right? So have to show that. Now, the moving party also must show the likelihood that it would suffer irreparable harm. Now, those 2 factors are the most critical here, says Kavanaugh. And particularly in close cases, the court also considers the balance of the harms on this little scale that we have and the equities of the parties and public interest. Where does it fall on the scale? So in my view, the government has made, says Kavanaugh, a sufficient showing that they are going to win. To begin with, given the significance of the issue to the government's immigration enforcement, this court would likely grant. If the Court of Appeals in the 9th Circuit affirms the lower level judges, we're going to reverse it. In addition, on 2 alternative grounds, the government has demonstrated a fair prospect of reversal as well. Now, first, under this court's decision, okay, the Supreme Court says, we've already talked about this, and these other judges should have paid attention. We already said in LA, Los Angeles versus Lyons, that the plaintiffs probably lack standing. They can't seek a broad injunction restricting immigration officers from making investigative stops. The entire enforcement apparatus can come to a grinding halt because some liberal judge decided so. They've already decided that in Lyons, the Supreme Court case from 1983, the court held that the standing to obtain future injunctive relief does not exist merely because they experience some sort of a past harm and fear its recurrence. You need more than that. What matters is the reality of the threat and the repeated injury. You can't have subjective apprehensions about this. Well, we're scared we might get arrested and deported. Okay. A lot of things might happen to you. Doesn't mean that they will. And you can't sue over your concerns. Plaintiff standing theory largely track that. We already rejected it in Lyons. Now they're trying to say, well, we have standing. No, you're the same as those plaintiffs. Like in Lyons, the plaintiffs here who were suing, they say that they were the subjects of unlawful enforcement actions in the past, namely being stopped for immigration questioning allegedly without reasonable suspicion or unlawful presence. And like in the Lyons case, the Supreme Court case but from before, these plaintiffs also seek a forward-looking injunction to enjoin law enforcement from stopping them without reasonable suspicion in the future. So all law enforcement is handcuffed. But like in Lyons, these plaintiffs, these people suing, they have no good basis to believe that law enforcement will stop them. Why are they going to stop you in the future based on these prohibited factors? And certainly no good basis for believing that any stop is imminent. And so therefore, they don't have standing. You need a substantial likelihood that you're going to be wronged in a similar way, and they can't show that here. So plaintiffs and their standing theory is especially deficient in this case because immigration officers also use their experience to stop illegal immigrants based on a variety of factors. So even if the government had a policy of making stops based on factors that are prohibited, immigration officers might not rely only on those factors when they stop them in the future. That's the totality of the circumstances that applies everywhere. Now, second, even if they had standing, the government is also going to win on the Fourth Amendment issue, okay? Because that's what we've got here. Now, to stop an individual for brief questioning about immigration status, the rule says the government must have reasonable suspicion that person is here illegally. Now, reasonable suspicion is a pretty low standard. It's a lesser requirement than probable cause and considerably short preponderance of the evidence standard. Okay, it's more likely than not. 51% more likely, you go. Whether an officer has reasonable suspicion also depends on the totality of the circumstances. And this has been in our precedent and our case law forever. They're citing these two cases right here from the Supreme Court. Now here, the circumstances include that there is an extremely high number and high percentage of illegals in LA, that those individuals tend to gather in certain locations to seek daily work. They work in certain kinds of jobs, day labor, landscaping, agriculture, construction. Those don't require paperwork. And any other factors are all part of this. Not speaking much English, coming from Mexico or Central America, all pretty good indicia, since, there's 2 million of them who flooded across in this one city. So to be clear, apparent ethnicity alone cannot furnish reasonable suspicion. It's not just like, you look a little bit Mexican to me, you're getting out of here, right? There's a whole other list that they're going through. Reasonable, articulable facts. Now, to be clear, apparent ethnicity is not enough. However, it can be a relevant factor, clearly, when considered along with other salient factors. And so under this court's precedents, which we've been talking about forever, says Kavanaugh, not to mention common sense, idiots, those circumstances taken together he didn't say idiots, I added that. Those circumstances taken together can constitute at least reasonable suspicion of illegal presence. Obviously, it's common sense. So importantly, reasonable suspicion means only that immigration officers may briefly stop the individual and just inquire. If the person is a citizen or otherwise, they're free. It's over. It's a brief encounter. You can move on. Only if the person is illegally in the United States may it proceed further. And so in short, says Kavanaugh, given this court's precedents, the government has demonstrated a fair prospect of success, both on standing and Fourth Amendment grounds. To conclude otherwise, this court would likely have to overrule or significantly narrow two separate lines of precedence. The Lyons line, you got to erase all those cases, and the Burgioni line. All of them have to go. It's ridiculous, like huge branches of the judicial tree just getting lopped off because some judge is mad Trump's arresting illegals. And it's like malpractice for these judges to be doing this stuff. The government has also demonstrated that it would likely suffer irreparable harm if the injunction is not stayed. So it is in this case, says Kavanaugh, particularly given the fact that there's millions of them here, the myriad significant economic and social problems that are caused by illegal immigration, they already fleshed that out in a prior Supreme Court case. And the government's efforts to prioritize these have been passed by Congress. Congress actually enacted laws giving them the power to do it. Now, notably, the lower level judge's injunctions threatens contempt sanctions against immigration officers who make brief investigative stops that they say violate my injunction. So now he is punishing law enforcement for enforcing the law that is on the books. The prospect of such after-the-fact judicial second-guessing and contempt proceedings will inevitably chill lawful immigration enforcement efforts, which is the entire point. So on the two most critical factors, Kavanaugh continues, the government is going to win. Now let's talk about the balance of the harms and the equities, one of our favorites. It's the old balancing scale. Let's see what they say. As with many other applications for relief to this court, we must balance these, and the harms and the equities may appear weighty on both sides. And when that happens, when it's like, well, illegals and citizens, and in those circumstances, to borrow from Justice Scalia, rest in peace, and his apt words from a different context, trying to determine whether one party's harms or equities outweigh another party's can be akin to judging whether a particular line is longer and a particular rock is heavy. It's all kind of, sometimes it doesn't work. Pick the wrong line. Moreover, in a case like this, says Kavanaugh, involving government action, balancing the harms and equities can become especially difficult and policy-laden. That is because a court must balance the harms that are to be regulated and how this is going to impact the parties. But in any event, The balance of the harms and the equities favors the government, America, the people. The interest of individuals who are illegally in the country in avoiding being stopped by law enforcement for questioning is ultimately an interest in evading the law. Like, what are they trying to protect? What are they protecting? The right to evade law enforcement, essentially. That is not an especially weighty legal interest. Like, we're not going to protect that. We're not going to say that we're going to wipe out 2 entire branches of case precedent just for this. To be sure, I recognize and I fully appreciate, says Kavanaugh, that many, not all, but many illegal immigrants do come to the United States to escape poverty and lack of freedom and opportunities in their home countries and to make better lives for themselves and their families. I think that's true. I think that I would agree with that. Now, and I understand that they may feel somewhat misled by the varying U.S. approaches to immigration enforcement over the last few decades. Totally. Yeah, and it's not a humanitarian thing either, right, to bring in illegal aliens in violation of our law. If they really wanted to be humanitarians, the Democrats and the Republicans, they could have just passed some immigration statutes and just started bringing in these people like, Canada was. But they couldn't really do that because they knew it wasn't popular. Our people in our country don't want to be invaded by foreigners who are then going to shatter our culture, take over our cities, waving foreign flags all over the place, killing our citizens. It's enough. But the fact remains that under the laws passed by Congress and the president, they are acting illegally by remaining in the United States. You might have sympathy. You might, it's just the law. Change the law. You don't have to create a class of people who live in a gray illegality area. At least unless Congress and the president have some other approach to this. By illegally immigrating into and remaining in the country, they are not only violating the immigration laws, but they're also jumping in front of those other non-citizens who follow the rules and wait in line to immigrate into the United States to do it legally. For those reasons, the interest of the government win, and the interest of illegal immigrants in evading questioning and thus evading the detection of their illegal presence are not particularly substantial as a legal matter. It's not like we're protecting your First Amendment right. But they think that. They think, it's due process rights for these illegals, and you can't be a bigot and ask them questions. Moreover, as for stops of those individuals who are illegally in the country, the questioning in those circumstances is typically brief. Individuals may promptly go if they're here legally. And finally, although the Weiner dissent emphasizes the force allegedly used by immigration officers, that's not what we're talking about in this case, Sonia. The district court enjoined the government from stopping individuals for questioning, not about force at all. The injunction is silent as to the use of force. The court didn't even mention it. So what are you talking about it for? And it's not even necessary for the injunction to address the force question because it's about the Fourth Amendment. Now, and to the extent that excessive force has been used, Fourth Amendment prohibits that and can't do it. Now, I agree with the dissent that there's a law about excessive force and you can't use that, anywhere. But to reiterate, this injunction is not about that. So in short, the balance of the harms and the equities favors the government and America, especially in an immigration case like this one. It is also important to stress the proper role of the judiciary. Judges, whiners talking to the media. The Supreme Court doesn't have our back. Oh my gosh, who wrote that? I want to know who wrote that. Was that Gia Cobb? Was that Judge Chutkan? Don't tell me that was Boasberg. Was it Zenas? It might have been her. Saying, it should come as no surprise that some administrations may be more laissez-faire, free market immigration, the libertarians out there, and the Bidens, I guess, just saying, well, to the world, just, osmosis into whatever country suits them best. Saying Article 3 judges may have views on this policy approach. They may think that they're better, smarter, fairer, more just, but judges are not appointed to make policy calls. They're judges. We merely ensure in justiciable cases that are actually cases and controversies that the executive branch acts within the confines of the Constitution and the federal statutes. And just as this court a few years ago declined to step outside our constitutionally assigned role to improperly compel greater executive branch enforcement, so we can't force them, okay, like the court said, we can't force Joe Biden to enforce the law, I guess is what they found in U.S. versus Texas, Biden versus Texas. We now likewise must decline to step outside our role to restrict it. So the executive has discretion. Joe Biden wants to open the borders and flood our country with illegals because Alejandro was in favor of that, and that's fine. He can do that, Supreme Court said. But Trump can do the same. And so the surge should continue. Now, in sum, the government has demonstrated a fair prospect of success on the merits and has met the other factors for an interim stay. And so I therefore vote to grant the application for a stay and to lock down that lower level judge. Now, the dissent is here, and it's the three whiners. At least Jackson's not writing this one. So she took a little break. Like, no. She's like, no, I'll write it. Like, nope, we're good. Sonia, I'll take this one. Are you sure? I already started. Nope, it's ours. So in early June, writes Sonia, the government launched immigration enforcement raids across LA. And here they were armed and masked, and they pulled up the car washes and they were seizing individuals. They didn't even ask a single question. Give me a break. So a federal district court found these raids were part of a pattern. They said, well, they're targeting their race. They say they're targeting their Spanish or English, type of location, and more. But instead of allowing the district court to consider these troubling allegations in a normal course, a majority of this court decides to take the once extraordinary step of staying the order. It's not extraordinary at all. That decision is yet another, here you go. All right. It's another grave misuse of our emergency docket. Okay, so this is going to be a procedural dissent. It's not going to be interesting. We should not have to live in a country where the government can seize anyone who looks Latino, speaks Spanish, or appears to work a low-wage job. Okay, and appears to work a low-wage job. And that's not exactly it, right? It's not like you're like a cashier someplace that you got to you got a license or like a grocery bagger or something like that, right? Entry-level jobs, okay? You have to go get validated you're a citizen and do that. It's not low wages, Sonia. It's illegal jobs who are being paid under the table. And all of those things, if you are Latino, you speak Spanish, you're outside of Home Depot, probably a pretty good person to ask a question. And by the way, they're only asking them a question. It's just are determining, are you a citizen or not? What's your status? And she's going to call that a seizure. And I think you could debate that, right? What is an actual seizure? When does a seizure occur? Is questioning a seizure of the person? I think it could depend on the consequence, on the context. But it's not seizing, asking questions about a person's status. And that's what the issue is. Like, so she's turning this into something that it clearly isn't. Like, the case is not even about seizing people. If it's about seizing people, how come they didn't file a habeas petition? Like, did somebody get seized here? Who was it? No, it's not. Nobody was seized. Not in this case. In other cases, they can file their own habeas petitions and say, I was illegally seized by Trump, blah, blah, blah. That's not what this is. This is an attempt to try to stop the enforcement of immigration law in America by judges who just decide that they know better than everybody. So she says, yeah, we launched a huge operation and they were carrying handguns. Cops carry rifles down in Mexico. It's not anything new for them. They shouldn't be too freaked out about it. Other operations at large encounters include more force and fewer questions. They were tackling Latino day laborers. And if you're fleeing, I mean, that seems like it's probably a pretty good indicator that you're not a citizen. So fleeing from law enforcement is the same thing. The operation has sparked panic and fear across LA. Well, in our country, we want to enforce the laws. If you're panicked because you broke the laws, you have an option to leave. If you're panicky and fearful, just go back home. Kristi Noem will fly your butt out of here. No problem. They'll put you on a nice flight, give your kids teddy bears, whatever. Saying another Latino U.S. was similarly detained. And so, all right, we don't need to spend a lot of time on this, but I'll just fast forward through it. She goes on for like 30, another 20 pages on this, talking about the Fourth Amendment. I think it's ultimately just a procedural. The government moves beyond background demographics and saying other companies who've hired. It bears little resemblance to the government's hypothetical. And you get there. It's Sotomayor. So they just love illegal aliens and they'll fight for them. They deserve due process. They deserve all the benefits of the doubt. The case law that's been in existence for decades and that has already been litigated by the Supreme Court will continue to stand, the liberal whiner judges notwithstanding. And so one person who was in the majority decision is Amy Coney Barrett. And she was on over with Barry Weiss at the FP. That's why it's worth $200 million. We've never gotten a Supreme Court justice here. And here is what was said in, I think, a pretty awkward question, but here is what went down.
You once described yourself as a one jalapeno gal.
All right, audio's super low. Let me fix that real quick on that clip, and we'll get that boosted up so we can actually hear it.
Opposed to the judge you clerked for, Justice Scalia, who you described as a 5 jalapeno guy. Not a reference, obviously, to how you take your Indian or Mexican food, but a reference to the way that he wrote and the spiciness of it. And you might describe yourself that way, but here is what you wrote in Trump versus Casa, in which you were taking on Justice Jackson's dissent head on, writing this: Justice Jackson decries an imperial executive while embracing an imperial judiciary.
It was epic.
You said that she was pushing a vision of the judicial role that would make even the most ardent defender of judicial supremacy blush. And I think given your general restraint and stoicism and sobriety on the page, people were like thinking you were a little Scalia-esque in that. Do you regret the way that you phrased it?
No.
Should you have gone further?
No. And it is true that my general posture is I'm not, I personally just tend not to be spicy for the sake of being spicy, but I am from New Orleans and everyone likes a little Tabasco once in a while. No, I mean, I think that you calibrate an opinion. I mean, sometimes there's a time and place for everything, and I thought Justice Jackson had made an argument in strong terms that I thought warranted a response, and I thought that I set the calibration right. But I hasten to add, that's an argument about ideas. One thing Justice Scalia used to say that I love is, I attack ideas, I don't attack people.
Yeah, not personal.
And if you can't keep the two separate, you don't belong on a multi-member court.
Oh!
So I have the deepest respect for Justice Jackson, and that was not an attack on Justice Jackson. We just disagreed about the principle. We just disagreed about this question of the scope of judicial power.
Yeah, and so why would Amy Coney Barrett regret that? It was one of her best decisions of all time. And if you recall, I'm pretty sure that was the same dissent that Ketanji came out and she said, ... wait for it, full stop. Remember that stupid opinion we read? We're like, oh my gosh, is she a blogger or a Supreme Court justice? And so Amy Coney Barrett obliterated her, and deservedly so. And here was another question about a constitutional crisis. And you're hearing this a lot from the hysterics on the left, but everything is a crisis for them, right? COVID, everyone's going to die. Illegal immigration, climate change, whatever it is, right? They go take the opposite issue, or opposite side. Everything's crumbling down. It's the boy who cried wolf constantly. And now we're in a constitutional crisis. Our democracy's under attack, blah, blah, blah. Here's what the judge, Amy Coney Barrett, had to say about that.
How will we know if we're in
Boost that volume up. These are low clips.
a constitutional crisis? As American citizens, like, what would that look like?
Here, let's do this.
Because honestly, if you're just a busy person going about your day and you see a lot of headlines that we're in a constitutional crisis, it's like, okay, how will we know that? What would that look like?
Well, look, I think the Constitution is alive and well, and I think that I don't know what a constitutional crisis would look like. I don't think that we are currently in a constitutional crisis, however. I mean, I think that our country remains committed to the rule of law. I think we have functioning courts. I think a constitutional crisis, we would clearly be in one if the rule of law crumbled, but that is not the place where we are. And it is true that, I mean, it's plainly true, that right now we're in a time of passionate disagreement in America, but we have been in times of passionate disagreement before. I mean, if you just look at the 20th century and you think about campus unrest during the Vietnam War, and you think about the Great Depression, and then if you go back a little farther and you think about the Civil War, you think about the 50s and you think about the Civil Rights Movement. I mean, we've had times in this country where we have been bitterly divided and we have come out stronger for it. And I think that one of the themes that I try to hit in the book is that we need to learn to compromise and talk to one another and move forward past our disagreement to see one another as people and as fellow Americans and citizens. And that is the way to avert a constitutional crisis.
No compromise, no mercy, no peace. We're going to win. And we just won, and we're going to take it all. And that's for the good of the country. Okay, we had the opposite end of the Biden lefties try to shatter the country over 4 years. And so now we're playing hard. And of course, she's coming out saying we're going to compromise, but she's been pretty good on a couple decisions recently. There was the one decision we were very unhappy about, which was in Texas when they scolded that Texas judge who did a great job. But 6-3 decision, nice victory, and the administration is not letting up on this. So the surge will continue. Tom Homan says ICE is going to double down on this.
We're at war with the criminal cartels, and Governor Pritzker protects criminal, illegal alien, public safety threats every day in that state, along with Mayor Johnson. We proved that. The first week of the administration, I went to Chicago. I started an operation there. The first day, we arrested 9 sexual predators, most of them child rapists. We arrested 9 members of TDA. Several of those TDA members had a pistol, an illegal pistol with a switch on it, which makes that pistol fully automatic. We arrested 2 illegal aliens that had a homicide conviction. That was the first day in Chicago. So, you know, President Trump and this administration, we're at war with the criminal cartels and those who want to murder and rape the American citizens. You're damn right. We're at war with the criminal cartels.
We are at war, and it's nice that we have a president who finally recognizes that and is eliminating direct threats on their way in. But Homeland explained in response to this decision from the Supreme Court, we're doubling down. We've got a new operation called Midway Blitz, baby. Pretty cool. DHS is targeting the worst of the worst criminal illegal aliens who flock to Chicago and Illinois because of Pritzker's sanctuary city policies. And they're creating these sanctuaries for foreigners to come in and basically commandeer those cities. Not anymore. President Trump and Secretary Noem will no longer allow these dangerous individuals to terrorize Illinois citizens any longer, giving us some more background on some of these people. This guy, Gabriel Galvez, 47-year-old criminal illegal, battery, aggravated assault, DUI, trespassing, criminal damage, violating orders of protection, okay, multiple assaults. Galvez has been identified as a Latin King gang member. ICE lodged arrest detainers against him 12 times. Each time, Cook County in Chicago did not honor the detainer, and they released this dude, okay? They hate you if you're a citizen. Why? And look, we see what happens on this. We just covered this morning on the members only stream. We'll have a segment on that coming out. Arena's murder on the Metro. And these people just keep getting released and released and released until they kill somebody. It's insanity. We should enforce the law. Here's another one. Javier, 46-year-old. Oh, prostitution, drug possession, active warrant, drug manufacturing. You know, here, just like, I guess, Kilmar, like a Maryland man here, just looking for a better job. Here's another one. Victor Gomez, 45-year-old, criminal illegal. Aggravated unlawful use of a weapon. ICE tries to capture him. They let him go. Here's another one over there. Released by Chicago. 41-year-old, criminal illegal, drug possession, all sorts of crimes. The list goes on, right? You can see all these amigos here, all now wanted, and the law enforcement maniacs just keep letting them out. Yeah, Operation Midway Blitz, baby. Looking good. That's Hegseth over there. So shout out to the memer, Memphis B3113, for the fun surprise at the end of the thread. So they're going to get all of these people. In fact, they just showed up in Chicago. Here is what Fox News was reporting, saying ICE is launching Operation Midway Blitz in Illinois.
So the surge has begun. You can see the new ICE vehicles on the streets here in Chicago. We're just outside the Cook County Courthouse, but that surge is part of the ICE-led Operation Midway Blitz that they say is in honor of a beautiful young Chicago woman, Katie Abraham, who was killed by an illegal alien drunk driver back in January of this year. And while we are getting reaction from Illinois Senator Dick Durbin, who says that this blitz won't make Chicagoans safer, let me show you this video. Early this morning, I was out with one of ICE's teams, and we arrested this individual. His name is Juan Gaspar, and he is a 43-year-old illegal alien from Mexico. He has been convicted in 2024 of forcibly sexually assaulting a child under the age of 13.
Wow.
He was taken, as you can see here, without incident, but this is all part of the exact sort of violent criminal illegal alien that the ICE operations hope to bring in, apprehend, and ultimately deport. We were riding along with ICE's Deputy Director, Madison Sheehan. She talked a little bit about this operation to us, as well as what she has to say to the Democrats that are criticizing it. Listen.
This is an opportunity for us to go into sanctuary cities and work against these sanctuary city policies and not let them deter ICE from being able to do our work, to go after the worst of the worst, just like the guy behind me who committed sexual assault against a minor. I mean, these criminal aliens have wreaked havoc on the American people for years, and that time is over. And even when we have pushback from Democrat leadership, that's not going to stop us. We're going to continue to go after the worst of the worst, just like somebody who committed sexual assault against a minor.
And this is just day one, Martha. We understand this could go on for weeks as they surge more ICE personnel as well as federal law enforcement partners. Martha?
Looking forward to it. And so we're going to keep our eye on this one. I'm sure there'll be more lawsuits. I'm sure that Pritzi and the rest of them will sue. And they'll come back. They'll try to maybe address Kavanaugh's standing issue or something. But the Supreme Court has just said, reasonable, articulable suspicion is the standard, and they're allowed to use all of the same indicia that they've always been allowed to use. And so stop your crying and hyperventilating about it. And shout out to M. Sheehan here, Madison, for taking the lead and explaining how this is going down in Chicago, rounding up these maniacs who are just waiting in the parks for more kids. You know, oh yeah, playground over here. And they let them out. Yeah, I wonder if any kids playing over here on their scooters. Yeah, disgusting. All right, so he's arrested, and the Supreme Court came out 6-3 with a major victory for America. And we, of course, will keep our eye on this one. And of course, the PDF is not working, but you remember what it looked like. So we'll keep our eye on this one, my friends. Thanks for subscribing and joining as we do. Now, we're not done yet. We got a bunch more to get to today. So let's start over here. We have a content warning coming up because she's got a potty mouth. And let's talk about this one. Jean Carroll, the crazy lady who got a big fat verdict out of President Trump after Democratic operatives exploited her. Remember that she was at that party with Molly Jong-Fast, a Democrat lunatic, who then introduced her to George Conway, another Democrat lunatic lawyer. And then they got Reid Hoffman to come in here and put up hundreds of thousands of dollars to fund this lawsuit against Trump as part of a multifaceted, multi-pronged attack on him. Criminal charges, ballot removals, civil lawsuits, and sex assault claims. Now, we covered the whole trial here, read through the transcripts, and debriefed it. And we commented at the time that they were really puffing up her appearance. And those of you who joined us on this, remember, we thought, what did they do? They made her look like 40 years younger, attempted to, right? Still look a little strange and awkward. But now she's out. She's basically admitting, you know, that they were trying to dupe the jury. They were trying to get the jury to believe this. And this was all taking place in New York. Of course, those juries are very Democratic. And this is not that unusual, honestly, to have somebody change their appearance before a trial, right? To look the part a little bit more. Happens all the time. It's just a little dishonest, especially when you've got no other evidence. And she said, we have to try to trick the jury. Amuse got this one over from Ample Lamps. Amuse said, Jean Carroll admits she tricked the jury into making herself look more effable. So content warning coming up. We'll try to, as she says it, but she's said that she's glad it worked. Tim Miller gets emotional. How much that must fuel Carolyn's feminist juices, right? So the feminists, you can't ever, I guess, use, you know, if you're a man and you want to have intercourse with a woman, I think that's offensive to feminists. Is that the thesis? So the fact that she becomes more attractive so that people would think, oh yeah, somebody would want to have intercourse with her, then wouldn't that be going against her feminism? I don't know. But she's a complicated person, as we'll find out. We also had a Second Circuit Court of Appeals decision that came down, and they found per curiam in favor of her. And we think that this will probably get reversed on the way up because Trump has presidential immunity. And so we'll just hit the highlights here. But here is the clip, and it came over from Ample Lamps. Encourage you to give them a follow, Lamps_Apple. And here is what it sounded like. He asked her this question.
That has to be pretty dispiriting. That then you're like, well, I got to be hotter to win this case.
Yeah, I got to be is the word. So what we did is we looked. I had a talk show, a TV talk show in 1996. I went through that, some of the shows, took screenshots of my hair cut in a bob, and we did then I found the hairdresser and the makeup person who made me look like that in 1996. She came every day to trial, did my hair and makeup exactly like it was in 1996. I wore the exact same clothes I wore in 1996, the exact clothes.
Yeah, they're back. It's back in trend.
Yeah. Oh, I don't have a book here, but the thing I'm wearing on the cover, I bought it at Bergdorf's in 1993. So that's the kind of... And I didn't look like I looked in 96, but I looked like somebody who could have looked like somebody in 96. And it was enough. It was enough.
It was.
So it was a trick.
District, that doesn't make you annoyed? That doesn't, your feminist juices don't start flowing over that? Like,
yeah, because you just like hiked your boobs up. Like, is that what feminism is? And she just said it was a trick, right? We were tricking the jury. It's because she wasn't effable back then. Nobody wanted to F her ever because she's crazy. But this is where the conversation is going. Now, she had a victory today. We have to give her that. But we think this will be reversed. Trump has presidential immunity. This came out of the Southern District of New York. It was a rigged trial brought by Judge Kaplan, and they awarded this crazy lady $83 million in damages. And a jury found Trump acted with malice, and he made defamatory statements. He was the president. He said in June 2019, he was responding to public comments about him, abusing this woman. He was the president. He's allowed to comment on those things. You can't sue him for that. Trump appeals, arguing he's entitled to presidential immunity or a new trial. Trump also contends the jury's damages award is excessive and must be remitted. And they give us a full opinion on this. It's 70 pages. Here's some background. On June 21, New York Magazine published an excerpt. 2019, Trump is still in the White House. From E. Jean Carroll's forthcoming book, she says that Trump abused her in a Bergdorf's in 1996. And then the date was actually, I think, kind of fluid. I mean, it changed like in between the trials. Trump responded both when he was president and again after he left office by publicly accusing her of fabricating her allegations. So then Carroll sued Trump initially for defamation based on the terms that the words that he said as the president, initially. Later, following other developments, when they changed the law, because they literally in New York changed the law, Roberta Kaplan and Kathy Hochul opened up the law to create a new claim. Carroll sued Trump for the assault in 1996. They just extended the statute of limitations for a private civil action, and for defamation based on statements after the term had ended. So Carroll, too, actually went first. So they're out of order. The jury said, yep, he assaulted her, Carroll. But the jury found that he did not R her. Remember, there were two counts. Did Trump R you in the dressing room? Did he Bergdorf you in the dressing room at Bergdorf's? No. Jury said no. They found she was not credible, right? And they said, actually, it was more of a second assault, which would use your, digital penetration, the old DJ Diddles, era. Says the jury award Carroll compensatory and punitive damages totaling $5 million. So that's for the assault. $5 million for the assault, $83 million because you said something bad about her. That's how this is. After the jury's verdict, the district court granted a partial summary judgment in Carroll 1, meaning Trump didn't even get a trial on the first in time case that started the whole thing. A jury thereafter awarded Carroll $83 million for defamation. So $5 million for getting sexually abused, $83 million for saying a woman's crazy. That's the jury. Now, the present appeal is from the judgment, and for the reasons below, they say Trump has failed to identify grounds that would warrant presidential immunity. And so they affirm the judgment of the district court, and it was basically unanimous across the board. And Trump released statements. I have a hard time believing this sticks. And the state court below, all right, so you get the point. So Trump lost this one. He'll appeal it, and we'll see what happens. But that's where that one stands. We also remember this video, too, because Apple Lamps clipped this one for us, too. And he said, E. Jean's kind of just a crazy person. Here is her residence. And I don't know if she was actually doing this interview from this location. You can see when she's speaking, the camera kind of moves a little bit, and there's some weird, like there's a vibration right there. I don't know if you can see that, but it's kind of, I don't know if it's a real background. Kind of looks like it's a real background, not some image or something. So I think she's in this residence right now. And here is what is going on over there.
I call it the mouse house because some very distinguished mice live here. Kahneman lives in the kitchen, Tversky lives in the bedroom. This is my shed. And on that side are the books that most influenced me growing up. On the door are the list of my dogs: Marky, Fortuna de la Spunky, Heidi, Tits, Bloody, and Hepburn. The streams and the rivers were dry, and it so horrified me that I came out and started painting the rocks blue to indicate that there was once a river here. And then after I got done painting the rocks, I just sort of walked over here and then did that tree and then did that tree and then I did this tree. And then I call it the mouse house because...
She's going to be able to paint a lot more trees if she gets that 83 million, but I don't think she's going to. I think Supreme Court will take this one up, and we're hopeful they reverse this because it's lunacy. You can get sued for defamation if you're the president responding to some lady who is smearing your name as the president to undermine your role as the president. You can't comment on those things. Seems like that is an insane outcome. We'll see what the Supreme Court does on it, but it's a per curiam opinion, so there's no dissent on this. And they're just going to give us a bunch of analysis and say, well, a lot of this is probably private conduct and doesn't actually have to fall. Remember the immunity thing. And so we'll see what the Supreme Court does. And I don't want to spend a lot of time on it because it just looks kind of annoying. But 3 buckets in the immunity case from Trump's SCOTUS decision. We've got absolute immunity, presumptive immunity, and no immunity. This is at least in the outer bounds of presidential immunity. Commenting from the White House about her, the case was rigged. This woman's crazy, in my opinion. She has several times accused other people of crimes, and they got a rigged outcome in New York based on a fake law that they passed so that she could sue. We'll keep our eye on this one, my friends. We'll wait for Trump's appeal. He's already intimated to the Supreme Court it's coming soon. And so we'll keep our eye on it. When it drops, we'll have it right here. Thanks for joining and subscribing as we get it. All right, one more update, my friends. And then we'll hear from you. The Biden pardon scandal continues to grow. You see, Alex Thompson over from Axios is giving us some new information on this. We've already gone through here the memo that came down explaining what Joe Biden's power really should be. And we reviewed all of this. Remember, they wrote this and they actually said in this document, you really should sign certain letters, Joe, right? This was a memo you can see was written for Joe because they have to capitalize you because he's too stupid to realize, what it says. But here, documents for your consideration with your original hand signature. Remember, pardon letters, his own team. Sign it with an ink and pen. You can't use your Autopen for these things. So the pardon letters have to be signed. Now, what Axios is telling us is high-ranking Biden officials who wrote that memo, says signing them, they repeatedly questioned and they criticized how Joe's team decided on these pardons and allowed the frequent use of an Autopen to sign them late in his term. Axios got their hands on internal emails from the administration. Now, after the political backlash to Hunter came down, the White House pushed to find more people to grant clemency to. There was a mad dash to find groups of people that he could then pardon, and then they largely didn't run it by the Justice Department to even vet them, per a person familiar with the story. Now, Biden granted clemency to more people than any president in history, 4,245 people. More than 95% of that in the last 3.5 months per Pew. Here's what you see, 96% of acts of clemency granted in each president's final fiscal year. Trump had a pretty high percentage in the last year, 84%. Everybody typically waits till the end, but Reagan, Carter, and Bush didn't. Biden, 96 of them in the final fiscal year. And really, like a huge portion of that was in the final 3 months after they lost. Now, late on January 19th, here's an email. January 19th, Trump's coming in tomorrow. An email from the Chief of Staff, Jeff Zients, approved the use of the Autopen for members of Biden's family. Okay? So those are invalid by their own standards. So they should be rescinded and they should be prosecuted. Zients himself didn't send the email because he's pathetic. His assistant, Rosa Poe, she sent it. She had access to his emails and she sent it on his behalf. Just like James Clapper, that coward. Remember, he had his assistant also say the president approved this because he didn't want to send the email because they're so spineless and they know they're criminals. So his assistant, Rosa Poe, sent the email. A person close to Jeff Zients, Biden's chief of staff, said she did so at his direction. He's like, all right, you send this. I can't type that out. From Jeffrey Zients, January 19, 2025, to Rosa Poe. And you remember Rosa Poe because she was in a bunch of these emails in the other memo that we went through here. And you can see, for example, they also write a memo about the clemency process. We read through the whole thing. This is how it works. It's a big, long process. Lots of approvals, by the way, right? The interesting thing about this document is that it sounds like pardons came up and did not go through this process at all, right? All of these steps. And you can see there was a lot of it. Look at all these approvals before you even get to it. You have an initial scoping, then you have a recommendation transmittal, then you have a petition review, then you have White House counsel looks at it, then you have a senior advisor to the president look at it, then you have a briefing memo, then the White House counsel vets it, then the president gets a presidential decision memo, then it goes up to the staff secretary, then you have presidential approval, then there's a rollout, then they notify them, and then they sign the document. Okay, that takes forever to do all of that. In fact, they talked about it. They have to really speed this process up because it's taken so long. Then the White House makes an announcement, and it's done. But they didn't do hardly any of that in these final days. Now, here was another email from Rosa Poe. You remember her. She was also firing off these emails. December 11th, she said, oh yeah, Jeff Zients, Ed Siskel, and Bruce Reed. They all approved these for 39 people and just sign them. And here's another one. Oh yeah, Joe Biden approved this one because Jeff Zients and Ed Siskel, they were all in there in the meeting. They were all in the meeting, right? POTUS met with Jeff, Ed, and Bruce and the president, decided to commute the sentences. But as we know, we went through a lot of this, and here's another one. Hi, Steph and Fiona. On January 19th, POTUS met with Ed, Bruce, Steve, Annie, and Anthony Bernal, who is Jill's work husband, and the president decided the following clemency actions: pardon, rescind, and preemptive pardons to all of the family. James, Sarah, Valerie, John, Francis. Hunter already got his. And Hunter's, as we know, was the one that was actually signed by a pen because Joe Biden's dementia kicked in on his last name right there. It's a joke. Dang it. Like, should we get another printed? No, just we already sealed this one. It's fine. No one will notice. So he actually signed that one, not an auto pen for Hunter, because they wanted that one to stick. And shout out to Hans Monkey for grabbing that. They know the other pardons were bad. That's why they signed that one the way they did. Now, this carries on. Let's go back to this document. We got, in addition, he also granted preemptive pardons to the members who served on the select committee to investigate the J6 attack. And he granted preemptive pardons to everyone else, the select committee, who are criminals, man. Liz Cheney. Sounds like her pardon might be invalid. That was an auto pen too, I believe. January 6th, also, the cops there. Now, the problem with all of this, of course, is that nobody was in those meetings. There was no meetings. Nobody took notes about those. All notes, so the National Archives came down. They said, all notes taken by staffers in meetings with Biden about these. We searched the meeting notes of all individuals who may have met with him, and we searched everything. And we did not find any specific meeting notes that clearly mention or even note that the president was present in those meetings. Okay, so they said, oh no, I met with Joe, and he approved it. But no real notes were ever logged. Nobody said, okay, it's, this date, here's in the room, as you type or write down in your notes. They just ignored it all. And now we see this email. So on Sunday, January 19th, Jeffrey Zients says, I approve. And so this is a follow-up email to this email that we just were reading right here, saying that Joe was going to pardon the family. Where did that one go? A little further down. Families down here. Okay, so this got sent on January 19th, 22/28/44. Then we get a new email. And I don't think we've seen this one yet. No, we have not seen this one yet. And here's what it looks like. You can see it's basically in response to this one. Hi, Steph and Fiona. That's from Rosa. Jeffrey Zients sends this one, 22/31. Okay, so a couple minutes later is what that looks like. 22/31, coming back down from 22/28. So Rosa sends this. All of these pardons are approved, and Jeff Zients then says they're approved by use of Autopen. I approve the use of the Autopen for the execution of all the following pardons. Thanks, Jeffrey Zients. Now, he sent that to Rosa, and then I guess Rosa would execute it, which is crazy. So if Biden wasn't in the meetings, their own memo says don't use the Autopen. We have an entire process that they're supposed to go through. We just, listed it out. All of these approvals, White House counsel, DOJ, everybody reviews it. He says on January 19th, we met, couldn't do any of those things. And now I approve the pardons via Autopen, right? So they're violating their own standards, in other words. Alex Thompson says in January, incoming staff secretary Jess Hertz wrote a memo saying you have to sign your original signature on the pardon letters. We read through that whole thing. Now, Biden's mass clemency has drawn a lot of criticisms, the most ever, 2,490 on a single day. Autopen going burr, like the Federal Reserve's printer. Biden said the people were convicted of non-violent drug offenses, but that was untrue. This person who resigned earlier this year says that calling the clemency recipients non-violent was untrue, or at least it was misleading. Okay, this guy Weinsheimer came out and posted this full memo. He criticizes Biden for granting clemency to a man who pled guilty to the M related to charges including a 2-year-old. Oh, great. I have no idea if the president was aware of these backgrounds when making clemency decisions. Of course not. How could you possibly? There's 2,500 of them. I think the language, he says, the commutation, his full memo, you can go check it out over there with Alex. He says, but his notes look at at some of the people that were granted clemency. He says, with this action, I have now issued more individual pardons and commutations than any president in U.S. history. Another pardon attorney also expressed anger. She said the Biden's White House lawyers asked the DOJ not to request the views of the murder victims' families if the department hadn't already done so. Crazy! Don't even ask the family about pardoning the dude who murdered their kid? Here's the memo, December 17th. Somebody wrote this, Elizabeth Oyer. Memo says there are 40 individuals on death row. Our office has received applications to commute 28 of those. In each instance, we have endeavored to solicit the views of the victims regarding the prospect of the death sentence. Now, the victims in these cases are diverse, and their views regarding commutation vary. One U.S. attorney's comments speaking on the case of Dylan Roof captured it well. The victims are not a monolith. They cannot be represented in a single uniform position for or against. Out of the total 40, we have victims in 22 cases. In four cases, the victims support commutation, which is just crazy and like suicidal. But in 7 cases, the victims have varying views, some supporting, some opposing. In 11 cases, the victims oppose commutation, which is the majority. And in addition, on additional 18 cases, we've got no idea about the victims' views. Where information is unavailable, the reason varies from case to case. In most instances, we lack information about the victims' views because neither the death sentence individual nor any co-defendant has submitted an application on clemency to us. At the request of the White House counsel, these people are sick. We have not affirmatively reached out to U.S. attorneys to seek victims' views in the instances in which the inmate has not filed a clemency petition. So, in other words, they'll just pardon them and commute their sentences, rather, without them even asking. And so since they didn't ask for it, you can do it without getting the input from the victim. In 4 cases where we've gotten applications, the victims have not provided their views, and 2, the U.S. attorney was unable to locate family members of the victims. U.S. attorney declined to provide a substantive response because they wanted to cover it up, essentially. And I don't know who these people were or why they got so many, privileges here to get this race through, but we need to find out. After the extent of Biden's clemency became clear, Oyer wrote an apologetic email to U.S. attorneys, according to multiple people. The Trump administration dismissed him after she raised concerns about Trump's team. Some people in the Biden White House tried to enforce more rigor in the use of the Autopen. In fact, Staff Secretary Steph Feldman, she repeatedly pushed and asked for more details before using the Autopen. Here's what he wrote. I don't think he released those emails. Maybe he did. Here's one saying, internally, some Biden White House officials pushed back on the frequent request to use the Autopen. Steph Feldman, who was in charge of the West Wing paper flow, repeatedly asked for more details and confirmation of the president's intent with the Autopen, including when it came to clemency, according to several emails. Hopefully Axios releases those. When did we get Biden's approval of this, she asked. On January 7th, after being asked to use the Autopen for an executive order. When did he say to do this? Ever? On January 16th, when told the use of the Autopen to commute cases were related to crack cocaine, she says, all right, I'm going to need an email from Rosa Poe on an original chain confirming Biden signs off on the specific documents when they're ready. Shout out to her for trying to check. Another DOJ official pardon attorney called Kira Gillespie in January 2025, she sent this one. She says, we got concerns with the crack program, Joe. As previously expressed by the ODAG, Pardon has serious concerns, that's our division, Pardon Division, with the prospect of a categorical approach to clemency at this late stage in the administration. We think that the data that has been given to you by the USSC is flawed and that it should not inform the president's clemency decisions without additional review of each specific case. Pardon, our division, strongly believes that individual review of clemency applications is the best way to ensure that meritorious candidates receive clemency from the administration. We note that there are over 600 cases, pardons and commutations, for which we have made favorable recommendations for clemency that the president has not even acted upon. And if he were to act on those cases, it would actually benefit clemency-worthy candidates. Now, I've uploaded to Kiteworks 4 documents. An additional bullet list of concerns about the individuals who appear on their priority crack list, probably Hunter's friends, a brief analysis of approximately 180 open clemency cases that appear on the priority crack list, and a brief analysis of 138 closed clemency cases that appear on the priority crack list, along with a bullet list of our concerns that you're just shoving these things through for whatever reason. And so that came over from Axios. Let's see if there's any other juiciness in there. Looks like not. We also, here it is, saying, yeah, the order came, Rosa Poe, she had access to Zeint's account. She wrote and sent the authorization of the president's Autopen on Zeint's behalf. And there's no evidence that Joe Biden was in the meetings. He says Biden was even thrilled about this. Just 3 days before leaving office, he commuted 2490 commutations, the most ever. He said, I've done more than anybody. And there's criminals murdering people all over our country. Weisenheimer, who worked at the DOJ for 34 years, resigned after Trump came in. And others are expressing anger about the death row inmates. Biden said he used the Autopen only for the thousands of commutations and pardons because he even admitted it. We're talking about a whole lot of people here. I can't sign all those. And but there's a forcing function by having to sign. I think Trump has said this, right? He likes to sign every single check, is what I've heard him say. I don't know if he still does that, but he wants to see every check that comes through. I'm not going to pay anything unless I see the invoice, ask what's it for, then I'll write the check. It slows the process down, right? You don't get to just copy and paste your homework. Zoom out. There's a function for that process. Because how could Joe Biden know anything about those 2490? He doesn't know anything about what he had for breakfast that morning. Internally, some senior White House official pushed back. When did we get approval from this? You didn't. Jeff just made it up out of his booty. So what we have is the Inquisition coming down. James Comer said, now we're digging into this. We got a bunch of subpoenas that are out. And his own staff said he's got to sign these things, but he didn't because he was the Autopen president. Now, the Biden family is also in more trouble. And one of the family members who got pardoned was James, one of Joe's consiglieres, who was out doing the deals with Hunty Poo. Here, this report came over from the Free Beacon. Quite good. Biden's brother James hired ex-Secret Service agents to help facilitate his Chinese business deals. And we also talked about the CEFC and Patrick Ho and how there's evidence that people were tipping off the investigations. We talked about the FBI agent who got convicted of crimes for that. But here's the story. Chuck Ross wrote this one today. Said James Biden hired a private investigator, Joe's brother, a retired Secret Service agent who did security for Joe, to find out whether a Chinese client of his suspected of bribery had an arrest warrant. This is a bombshell revelation that contradicts what the brother told Congress in a deposition. Liar. That pardon's not going to have that much weight if it's invalid, is it? Biden told House investigators in February, James, that he asked Secret Service agent Dale Pupillo to run a background check on Patrick Ho, an official with the CEFC. Biden, who was warned that he could be charged with perjury for lying, testified. The background check was simply his due diligence for his own edification prior to meeting with Hunter and Ho in Hong Kong, with the CEFC, a Chinese energy conglomerate. And asked by House Republicans whether the background check was to try and understand whether or not there was a federal investigation of Patrick Ho, Biden said, I have no idea. I just don't want to meet with anybody who has a warrant out. I'm not looking into whether there's an open investigation. I just want to know if he's an up and up dude. But a new DOJ Inspector General report cast doubt on the story. According to the report, Biden explicitly asked the private eye in November 2017, does the FBI have warrants against Ho? Have info on this individual. Biden wrote the investigator. I need a background on one specific issue. The retired agent, and a warrant for a person's arrest is often sealed, as I'm sure this one was. So he didn't know about it, until the arrest is effectuated. Then the person is captured. They unseal the warrant. You get to see the indictment and all the documents. But, they're not going to let you know, oh, hey, Patrick, we've got a warrant for you. We're going to come get you. So Biden had to go do it. Now, the retired agent who is referred to as the retired agent in the report told the FBI on 10/25/21, Biden informed him, we have information from China that Ho may be arrested. Biden said Ho wanted to travel to the United States for an event, but was concerned he would be arrested. The agent told Biden he did not find a warrant against Ho, but cautioned warrants are sensitive and they're not always detectable to private investigators. Yeah, because they're sealed. According to the Inspector General, the FBI concluded Ho decided to attend the event after James or another individual told him that it was safe. So that backfired bigly. So James yeah, no, it's safe. My guy checked. There's no open warrant. He flies in, gets arrested. Indeed, the FBI did have a warrant, and they arrested him in New York on November 16, 2017, on charges that he offered bribes to African officials for oil rights on behalf of China. He was convicted, sentenced to 3 years in prison. The Inspector General report also raises questions about whether James lied to Congress, which is a crime, about his efforts on behalf of Ho, while revealing the Biden administration obtained information that the president's brother sought confidential government information in order to help a corrupt Chinese business partner, and Hunty was just layered up in this. Investigators have probed the Biden family's unusual arrangement with CEFC. The firm paid Hunter and James $5 million in 2017 to scout out potential energy deals. Yeah. CEFC chairman gave Hunter a large diamond ring, worth $80,000. After Ho's arrest, CEFC paid Hunter another $1 million to represent Ho. Biden, who referred to Ho as the effing spy chief of China in private messages, never appeared on behalf of Ho during his trial. So the Bidens working with the effing spy chief of China, they know it, and they're doing deals with them because they're getting paid. Whether James lied to Congress may be a moot point, given that his father pardoned him. I don't know, those pardons are sounding more and more invalid by the day. The elder Biden said the controversial pardon was warranted because of the unrelenting attacks and threats against me. Yeah, right. The Inspector General report focuses mainly on the actions of Charles McGonigal. We talked about that whole case here. McGonigal provided the tip and warned all the Chinese about all of this. He was the lead FBI investigator who was warning them because he wanted to have a place to land after he left the Bureau. But the pardons, I think, are on the way towards being thrown out. And we just need somebody to actually prosecute somebody for these things, to challenge them. And we'll see if that happens. Now, James Comer gives us an update on the investigation. And here is what he said.
Well, first of all, Solomon continues to do great work. He's the best investigative reporter out there. With respect to what those memos stated, that totally contradicts earlier testimony that we've received in some of these depositions and transcribed interviews by Biden's inner circle. So their story doesn't add up. What the memos and emails that John Solomon just reported on your show, what they said versus what some of these people are coming in and saying under oath to us, totally different story. And we'll have more on that. We're going to bring in more. We have about 2 or 3 more people in that inner circle we wanted to depose. Remember, a big percentage of them pled the Fifth Amendment to avoid self-incrimination. Yeah. But we've gotten enough, Sean, to know that these stories aren't adding up. But one thing that is consistent with all the memos and with all the emails that we're receiving from the National Archives, as well as the testimony from the Biden inner circle, is the fact that no one in the White House saw Joe Biden very often, especially during the last 6 months of his presidency. We had Andrew Bates in today. And one of the things that Andrew Bates said that is consistent with everyone else is even though he was one of Joe Biden's top deputies, he would only see Joe Biden once a month. And that included seeing him in the hall or seeing him from a distance. As far as up close face-to-face interaction, it was very seldom. Maybe even, a couple of times a year. That's consistent with what Ian Sams told us in our last transcribed interview. He said that he only saw Joe Biden 2 times in 2 years, even though he was the spokesperson that would come out. And Sean, you probably read, dozens and dozens of sound bites from Ian Sams where he implied he had just saw Joe Biden and Joe Biden was at the top of his game. Yep. These people in the Biden White House covered for Joe Biden's cognitive decline. And I think with what we're seeing coming out with the emails and memos from the Merrick Garland Department of Justice that Solomon reported, I think that these pardons and executive orders, especially in the last few months of the Biden presidency, I think they're in legal jeopardy.
Yeah.
Okay, so are you convinced?
We think so too there, James Comer, because if he didn't properly sign them or even indicate his intention at any meeting or anything like that, how do they have the full weight and the power of the presidency? They don't. These pardons came from Jeff Zients. He's not the president. He can't do that.
Yeah, that's right. And I think the chances of Kamala Harris being asked to come in and testify increased significantly with this newest memo that John Solomon just talked about moments ago. So, look, Vice President Harris did not have the authority to approve the pardons. No. Joe Biden has done one interview post-presidency, and that was with the New York Times. And he admitted that he delegated the pardon authority. That is not how pardons work. Only the President of the United States has the ability to pardon someone. That's the law. And I think with what Joe Biden did when he self-incriminated himself with respect to his pardon process with the New York Times, with this new memo, with the depositions and transcribed interviews that we've already received from Biden's inner circle, I don't see how these pardons can stand up in a court of law. And I'm pretty certain that President Trump would agree that this isn't how the pardon process works, and there's no evidence that's emerged that Joe Biden himself knew and approved all those individual pardons.
Somebody needs to be charged. Liz Cheney and pencil neck Adam Schiff should be charged for crimes related to the January 6th committee. They abused office. They deleted evidence. A lot of this stuff was happening outside of the purview of congressional immunity. Liz Cheney was texting with Cassidy, clavicle girl, okay, outside of Congress. She was interfering with her attorney and their attorney-client relationship and all sorts of other collusion. They deleted evidence. They didn't even follow their own rules, HR 503. And if everything was such a well-oiled machine, how come all the records were deleted before they gave it back over to House administration? Why did that happen? Oh, yeah, because they're liars and they're covering this up. And a new January 6th committee is being formed right now. We're going to keep our eye on that one. A bill just passed, and so we're going to see who fills it up. But Comer is right. The way to process this is to challenge it, charge somebody. They can bring their pardon out as a defense in the court of law, and we'll duke it out there. And if they don't like the outcome of that, then they can appeal it. We can take this all the way up to the Supreme Court. But the more these emails come out, the more Benny Thompson, Pencil Schiff, Liz Cheney, maybe even Fauci, all of them, right, in precarious hot water. We're going to keep our eye on it and watch those pardons evaporate into air, and justice will be coming. All right, my friends, it has been a beautiful stream. Thank you so much for being here. Quick recap before we hear from you. We talked about some good stuff today. We went over to the Supreme Court and saw how in a 6-3 decision, the Trump administration pulls out a big win. We see that they can continue their ICE enforcement of federal laws and identify illegal aliens using reasonable suspicion, just like has always been the law. This is not anything new or hysterical. Even Amy Coney Barrett says, stop crying about all of this, okay? We are not in a constitutional crisis. This is just America. E. Jean Carroll also scored a victory today, even though she's admitting she tricked the jury. They didn't even believe her, right? They split the verdict on it. They're like, well, we hate Trump. She's crazy, but we hate Trump. So, okay, he DJ diddled her. Okay, great. So we got that. Now, we also went through a little bit of the appeal. I don't think it was that interesting, to be perfectly honest with you. They're just going to say he didn't have immunity. We're going to wait for the Supreme Court to settle that one out. And I think there's a lot even of precedent on this, because even Nixon, like there's even the U.S. Supreme Court Nixon case where he is immune from civil liability. That was a precursor to the criminal liability for President Trump. So I think he's pretty solid, but we got to have the Supreme Court get there. We also did a little trip down memory lane for this crazy lady's blue forest before we turned our attention over to Joe Biden's problematic pardons crumbling around him as we're learning that he didn't follow his own procedures. Okay, there was a whole sequence before a pardon gets validated. Never went through that. Not saying you have to, but it's a pretty good indicator that they didn't follow the process. And we got people complaining about not having evidence of the president's intent. We've got Jeff sending emails via his assistant. We've got no evidence that Joe Biden was actually in any of the meetings based on the people's notes who were there. And the whole thing is now coming apart at the seams. And that means that guys like James Biden, the brother who was corrupt as hell with Hunter, are in trouble. Now, Hunter, surprisingly, might be the only one that has a valid pardon. I guess because Joe loves him the most. But we heard from James Comer, and the investigation will continue. Can't wait to read some more letters from Congress and the Judiciary Committee. Really fun letters. We like reading letters here. Would be nice to see some, substantive outcomes, but we'll read the letters in the meantime. And my friends, now it's time to hear from you. Thank you for being here. Happy Monday. I hope your week is amazing so far. You're feeling good, bursting full of energy. What's up, Donut? Clipping for us today. Thank you, Donut. Mind me in the house. We got new membos. We got a bunch of comments today. What a beautiful day. Thank you, my friends, for sending these in and supporting us over here. It's Monday again. I better get ready for the day's shenanigans. Say shenanigans one more time. Just say it. Joshua P. 78. What's up? 24 months as a member. That's 2 full years. 2 years. My, how the time doth fly. It does. It's very poetic. Joshua P. It's very beautiful. The time doth fly. Doth fly rapidly. No doubt. Thank you, Joshua. Thanks for being here for 24 months, my man. Appreciate you. Lady Hawk. What's up? Welcome, Lady Hawk. Grab the members only stream from this morning. Joey made an appearance this morning. So my brother popped out. He's kind of in his PJs. He didn't really look presentable, but, you know, he still said hello. Lady Hawk, what's up? And he's going to do some podcasting, I'm sure, here this week. He's excited about it. Lady Hawk, thank you for that. Welcome aboard. And Cheryl says, for Joe's hash browns and sausages, which is great. We need a fund. We need a fund for it. It's a lot. I got one round of it. And oh my gosh, there's a lot of. So thank you, Cheryl. Yeah, we're going to have a nice, hearty supply of hash browns and sausages for the next 12 days or so. Those are his jam. And they're good. I mean, honestly, like, come on. Can you blame him? It's hash browns and sausages. It's pretty good. RP game. We're exercising, though, too. We exercised today. He did bench press. He did great. I got videos. RP Games, what's up? 24 months as a member, says getting smarter by being here for 2 years. Thank you, the RP Games. Honest RP, thank you for saying that. I think I am too. Many of you might disagree with that, but I think I'm getting smarter. I'm trying to get smarter, trying to know more. Doesn't always stick, but that's the goal. You know, we want to have some fun. We want to stay engaged. We want to keep the energy up. We have a country to save. We have to have more energy, more fun, more intelligence than the other side. And it's not really hard to do that, obviously. So thank you for that, the RP Games. Thanks for being here, my man. I hope you're growing as I feel I am. Thank you. Chat with me. Does Joey need a hash brown or sausage fund? Probably. Probably. You got maybe, but then, you know, then it's like no excuse. It's like, Joe, it's like, hey, like at least there's like a limit. It's like, Joe, it can't afford anymore. The bank account's empty. I can't buy any more sausages. All right. We're broke. Credit card's broken. If he has a fund, it's like going to be unlimited. So it's a great idea. I'll have to think about it. Rub some dirt on it. Thank you for that. Yeah. Joey's going to have a great time with his big brother. I named my baby horse Joey Burrow. Yeah, we're going to have some fun. We're definitely going to have some fun. And so we might have to do early streams so that we can go do sausage and hash brown extravaganza in the afternoons. But we're going to go do some stuff. I think, we want to go get haircuts together. So we're going to go get haircuts at the barber shop and do stuff like that, like bro time. What's up? Chat with me. Rob, you don't mind sharing, do you? Joey's hash brown and sausage fun. No, come on over, man. I'm pretty good at making them. They're pretty good. Joey enjoyed them. They're pretty quick, pretty fast. Sometimes they take long, but yeah, they're pretty good. I use a little avocado oil in there. A little healthier for you. You make the excuse as you're shoving your face with hash browns and ketchup. Rubos, what's up, the Rubos? Said, oops, an accidental dono. Probably sat on your phone or something and just donated. Hate when that happens. I love when it happens, but Sheila the Pooh, thank you to the Rubos. Sheila the Pooh is here. 20 membos. Sheila, thank you for bringing in 20 new friends. Thank you for bringing in 20 new friends. Joseph coming in. Rocky, Bill Watkins. What's up, Tony B23? Chase Junkies here. Neil Nice. Bob White. What's up, Primo Avatar? Clinton Griffin. James Turpin. Renee Dunlop. What's up, Debbie McLevy? Andrew Umans. Cheryl Burke. IC333. Mia J's in the house. We got True Time. Rocco Rockwell. Strut Mom. And Christopher Hammonds. All gifted membos. Courtesy of Sheila Pooh. A million hugs to you. Thank you, Sheila. Welcome 20 new friends. Grab the member stream from this morning. We had a good time. And I love how the names are back, man. I'm so glad the names are back. It's so much easier. Hey, former, in the San Francisco Police Department Academy, former LEO in the house, says they beat our brains with what would a reasonable and prudent man do or believe. Yeah, those are like the magic words, Cops, it's like reasonable and prudent man and totality of the circumstances. They say that all the time. It's those are the standards. They got it. I know that it was stated as man and not person. Well, it worked for me because I never had a case bounce because of an error on my part. I always thought that it was stupid to go through all of the work to put a successful prosecution together, only to get it tossed because of stupidity or the need to punish the suspect. All that's needed is common sense. Well, we appreciate you, former. Yeah, thanks for not, or, some of it's not error. Like some of it's just kind of maliciousness. Cops get away with it, so they continue to do it. But we appreciate the good cops. NY says, I would tell Kavanaugh, you can't do a balancing act, okay? I just go by what is the law, presumably dumb or not. Well, I think so. Like the balancing test is kind of a mechanism of interpreting the facts. It's like you gotta weigh these things out and then come to your conclusion. So that's why they did it. This old guy says, I've always believed that Article 3 judges were appointed for life for good reason. However, more and more I'm convinced that 10 years is a much better term of office, and that SCOTUS is the only judicial appointment that should be for life. District judges need to be limited to shorter terms. In doing so, we overcome the seeding of the judiciary by any one party, and we stop the rogue judges already in place in our district courts. Yeah, it's an interesting question, this old guy. And we have a really problematic judiciary right now. The fact that we have got 12 judges who are going and speaking garbage about the Supreme Court is basically a mutiny, okay? It's a judicial coup is what they're trying to do. And they're hiding in the shadows like little cowards. They won't even say their names so that you could recuse from their court, since they're so biased about you, against you, and they want the Supreme Court to have their backs. It's pathetic. It's completely unbecoming of a judge or an attorney. They should be ashamed of themselves. They should be impeached for that. There should be an investigation, and they should be impeached for dishonoring their office. But I am in agreement with, Congress has a lot of power over the judges. They can set or eliminate jurisdictions or, shift things around. Like, what if they all moved jurisdictions or something? Or, created a different framework where they had to rotate or something. Yeah, I don't know. Or you had you might need a constitutional amendment, but you have a national amendment that gives you the power to remove judges, right? Some judges, like, you just decide whether to retain or to let go. We're just going to retain this judge this election or not. Maybe. Hey, super buff shaft in the house. Hey, wanted to post important donation link to save the forensic data on the AZ state audit. I know you watched on Rumble. Please look and share givesendgo.com/savetheevidence2020. What is this? Dang, almost 400 G's? Oh no, they need 400 G's. They've raised 10. Help fight and win with the only surviving evidence. Man, it sounds like an interesting one. Thanks for flagging it for us, my friends. If you're feeling like you're wanting to support this, Save the Evidence 2020 over at Give, Send, Go. And from Super Buff Shaft. Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, that's in Arizona. There's some strangeness going on in Arizona. We got to dive into that. Off Label says, right next door, Off Label Podcast. Have you subscribed? Kilmar is now appealing on the grounds that the media talking about him threatens him in other countries. He can't be deported because we talked about him. Well, I don't know how much media they have in Eswatini, Africa. I don't know if they're watching the news over there, but probably not much. It's probably a safe spot for him. This person, Bonsi CMB, says it's literally written on green cards. Sorry, I can't pronounce your name. It's literally written on green cards. That must carry it at all times and show it when asked. Asked by ICE? Just show it. You've got authorization to work. Problem solved. Well, they don't want to do that because that would reveal that many of them don't have green cards and they should be removed. Triggered Harambe. Rest in peace to Harambe. Moment of silence. Amen. If what Pritzker, Newsom, Johnson, and Wu are doing are so terrible and criminal, I am still waiting for Blondie to sue them and take away their funding. Well, she has sued a bunch of them, actually. So there are several sanctuary city lawsuits going on. I don't know that she's had much success in them because, she's suing in LA. Like, no. She's suing in Chicago. Like, no. Because it's Chicago and it's filled with, probably illegal-loving Democrat judges. But there is some action on it. And I think, honestly, the National Guard and the federal government just executing federal immigration enforcement law is the way to deal with these sanctuary cities. They are allowing the flag to be captured on that mound. And the federal government has a responsibility to not let that happen. So they'll take care of it. King of Biltong is in the house. You know where to go. It's at BiltongUSA.com. Code Robert. You'll save 10% off. And Biltong is one of the highest protein snacks in the world, boasting over 50% protein, packed with B vitamins, creatine, iron, zinc, and more. You can get yours today at BiltongUSA.com. We got this one from our friend in Cyrillic, I think. Says, what now? Putin suing Biden for saying that Putin has the eyes of a killer? Maybe. I don't know. I mean, maybe. Macron is suing Candace. So maybe we'll have Putin just sue Biden. I don't know. It would be an interesting one. Thank you for being here. What's up in the house? Hey, Sharpie Guy, good to have you, says, Rob, Biden staffers never heeded to any warning because they were, as brainwashed media, maybe, that Chameleon was going to be the prez, Kamala, and that they'd be home free. Prayers work, right? Justice is on the way soon, right? We hope so. Says, but the activist judges fueled by the activist rich people left. With USAID cash flow gone, now we have to get down to the brass tacks and boycott PayPal, Reid Hoffman, oh boy, and any other left-wing daddy warbucks, right? Who else is there? And what should we do, Rob? Fearless leader. Well, I think, so Sharpie Guy, I mean, I think we're doing it. We have to keep calling these people out. They try to hide in the shadows and fund these little operations. So I think that the answer in many ways is, sunlight is the best disinfectant. So that of course is provided that they lead to prosecutions for the people who deserve them. So step one is awareness. Then once you have awareness, then you can take action. What's up, Bruce Rice Baby in the house? Says, thank you for that, Bruce. Sky Queen says, Biden was sane the first time he committed treason. Yeah, like it's easy to write off Biden as just being like a demented man who doesn't know anything, but he knew enough. And he had a responsibility to not allow what happened to happen. So he should be held liable too. Death Silence. What's up, Death Silence? Says all EO bills and pardons should be deemed null and void. Start with sentencing Hunter for the crimes that he was found guilty of. Yeah, I know. Well, I mean, surprisingly, Death, it's like Hunter might be the only one that was valid because it was actually signed by hand. So he might be off free, but Liz Cheney, not so fast. Tony, hey, Monk, it's good to see you. No Autopen pardon for Biden. He did not pardon himself, no. People were contemplating whether he would or not. Hey, God bless America. Thank you for becoming a member in the house. Grab the members only stream from this morning and we'll have an after party. So come join us. As soon as we're done here, we'll say what's up. Cartier. Hey, Rob, what's the name of that restaurant you like with all the goofy crap on the walls and the mozzarella sticks? Shenanigans. Oh, you remember. Rick D, what's up? Democrat Florida State Senator Linda Stewart has been referred by Florida's Attorney General for a criminal investigation after she doxed the location of the ICE agents. Wow, that's nice. Yeah, maybe she'll get prosecuted. Look, we're looking forward to that. Like, where are our state AGs? We're on the right. Where are they? We got a good one in Florida. I think he's getting pretty aggressive. But now's the time. Like, man, if you're an attorney general or like a county attorney, like a Fannie Willis or a Letish, you can make a big name for yourself over these next 4 years. Sketch Therapy, what's up? 14 months as a member, coming up on 2 babies. Thank you for this, Sketch. I lurk silently, but I appreciate you and the chat greatly. We love the chat, man. We love you guys. Sketch, thanks for lurking. Lots of, people lurking, working while lurking. We love that. Thanks for being here and for supporting us by being a member for 14 months. Very grateful to have you. We, of course, are going over to our after party. But before we do, let's see what's cooking over on X. See if we've got any comments. Anybody joining us over there? We have a couple. Fred Petamonte says, why does any illegal alien get due process? They're not American citizens. I don't get it. So they do get some due process. Like they get a process in, being deported. Like they get asked who they are. They get notice. We're going to deport you. So any amount of process is process. The next question is that the due process for this issue? And the left, right, ACLU, they say that the due process should basically be analogous to Article 3 courts, and that you should be convicted of a crime by a jury of your peers, I guess of illegal aliens, maybe they want. Put all the illegals on there and ask if they were illegal, because that's their peers. And that is the only standard. Right? Like, in other words, that's the due process they deserve. They can't be removed until they go through all of that. That does not apply to them, obviously. So under Article 2, we've got immigration and removal powers. And that provides other due process. Okay, like no due process for illegals would be like, and I'm not endorsing this, of course, would be like if you just shot them. Oh, you're an illegal here. You're not supposed to be in our country. Now you're dead. You're shot or something, right? It's like no, or you shoot them at the border or something. or you just, arrest them and deport them, just put them in a van and drive them across the border or something like that, right? Like there's no real process that is systematized across the board. So it's about where the line is drawn, and they are trying to move it rapidly towards like being a citizen when the Constitution is not for the citizens of the world. It's we the people, for ourselves. We form this more perfect union for us, not for the whole world. And the people who don't understand that want that to happen. They want to be a part of this global entity because they hate America and they hate what we stand for. They hate free speech. They actually hate real due process. They just want due process for illegals. Well done. Thank you for sharing, moving, shaking. And Jody says, I'm hitting the rewind button. I just got out of our local city council meeting. Grassroots, right? Heck yeah. Be a part of your local government, y'all. Yeah, I did that. I served as a JAB, Judicial Advisory Appointments Board for the city of Scottsdale. Then they found out I did this show and they did not reelect me. Fred, why does any illegal alien get due process? It's because we are America. We give people a little, some process. We don't just act without, with arbitrariness or capriciousness. We actually give the illegals process. They want way more of it. And in fact, they get way more of it. Kilmar has had like lawyers, senators show up. He's got 2 judges colluding with each other to let him out. We had FBI let him go free. If you get stopped with driving on a suspended license or without a valid license, they impound your car. You get arrested, maybe. But your car is taken off the streets because you don't have a license for it. You don't have insurance. Like, it's your liability to everybody else. FBI, let him go. Tennessee, let him go. Ridiculous. All right, my friends, it has been a beautiful stream. Thank you for being here. Let's leave it here on the day. Of course, we're coming back tomorrow. We're going to get into it again. Before we wrap it up, I want to thank our amazing mods and meme smiths who keep this place oh so beautiful and nice and orderly around here. Big shout outs to Donut, to John, to Carrie B, to K Bean in the house. We got G-Gum, Just Ron, to Elliot, Neuro D, Dog Digger, and Janek, all modding the fort down for us, keeping things nice and orderly around here. And, now I'm trying to see what's going on with our friends on Twitch. And I can't see the chat for some reason. I don't know why that is. Because I don't know how to use Twitch at all, apparently. Is our chat on over there? Oh, there it is. Hey, tech support dude, what's up on Twitch? Says, good evening, Top Deck, what's up? And Idiot HQ. Watching over on Twitch. How nice of you to do that. All right, so my friends, we'll leave it there. We'll call it a day. And my friends, thanks for being here. Shout out to our Rumble friends also. What's going on, Rumble, man? What's going on? Zillow, my pillow. Jody's here. Neuro D, great to see you. Thanks for on the fort over there. Super Buffs over there. Dan in the house. J Ma, what's up, Jody? Amazing. Great to have you. And so it's been a beautiful day. Thanks for watching wherever it is you're watching. Thanks for subscribing and following wherever it is you happen to be. We will pause here for the evening, but we're coming back tomorrow. We're going to get into it again. And in order to do it appropriately, we are going to need to see you right back here so that together with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful night, my friends. Sleep very well. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching, my beautiful friends. Now it's that time where the stream must end. We brought the heat with every chat and line. Together we expose corruption. One more time we dove in the truth where the media hides. Lit up the lies with receipts on all sides. The fight isn't over, but we made them sweat. We ain't done yet, no, not just yet. Because together we are watching the watchers. Truth on our side. Watching the watchers. We won't be denied. Watching the watchers. Eyes open wide. Fighting for freedom with nothing to hide. friend who's ready to care. Tomorrow's lies are just today's news, but here we see through the scripted ruse. Together we are watching the watchers shine in the light. Watching the watchers defending what's right. Watching the watchers stay each night together and live